And in the beginning, because we only knew 6 songs, we had to play those same 6 songs over and over, like 30 or 40 times a day, because those were the only 6 songs we knew. So in the afternoon, after I'd already played those songs 25 times, I was going out of my mind, being bored, because if somebody said to you, hey, I want you to repeat the same 6 poems 40 times today, oh my goodness, you would be thinking, make it stop.
Yeah. It's a shame you think we're different under the colors of our skin. Welcome everyone to another episode of Listen to the Vibes, and I'm very privileged to have Mr. David Young here with me. And he's got some new music out, and I'm going to let him tell a little bit about himself, and we're going to get into a discussion. So, David, take it away.
Hey everybody, how's it going over there? I'm in the East Coast right now, and I started playing music when I was a kid. I actually played the recorder, the little Renaissance flute that everybody learns in 3rd or 4th grade, and I was the worst in my class the first year, and the second year we were given a second year of it as a choice, and I started getting the hang of it. And then I started to play guitar in high school. I was a big Led Zeppelin and Bad Company and AC/DC fan, and I played in an AC/DC tribute band from 1980 to 1982. Wow. I dressed up like Angus Young for 2 years in the shorts and the hat and the white shirt and the blue suit and the sneakers. And this was before tribute bands were really catching on. We were managed by the agency that managed a Rolling Stone tribute band called the Blushing Brides, and they were the biggest tribute band in America at the time. And so that's what I did for 2 years, and then I really burned out on that. I'm sure you can imagine doing one-nighters all over the country, doing 2 hours just like Angus Young and running around like a crazy man. On doing the whole thing, we all dressed like them. That was really before tribute bands were as popular as they are now. And then I moved to California in 1990. I soon ran out of money, like many musicians who moved to California. And out of desperation, I went down to Venice Beach with my little flute, my recorder that I played from 3rd grade. And I played for 2 hours. I didn't make $1. And I thought, wow, I can't even make it here where all the losers are. Because growing up in New York, I thought that Venice Beach was a place where people who were down on their luck went. Right. And so I was walking back up the beach towards my car, and it was really a very sad day in my life. And I came across this woman who was playing the Celtic harp. And I had met her once because she saw me singing and playing guitar in a rock club. Because that's what I did when I wasn't playing the flute on Venice Beach. I played in a rock band. Actually, I played in a band with Matt Apps, the drummer from Government Mule, when he first moved to California. When Warren Haynes was doing the Allman Brothers reunion tour. I think it was the 50th anniversary or 40th anniversary, some big anniversary for the Allman Brothers. And so, I met this woman who played the harp. We made these tapes at Venice Beach. Actually, we made it at a friend's garage and we sold them in Venice Beach. And the first tape we made, we had a budget of $90. We recorded the whole album for $90 because it was $15 an hour. It took us 2 hours to set up, 2 hours to record us improvising, and I mixed the album in 2 more hours. So for the rest of my life, I know that 6 times 15 is $90 because I had $100 left. And with the $10 I had left, we bought a pizza. And we made this tape called Celestial Winds, and we sold it at Venice Beach every weekend. And we sold 10,000 copies of that tape at Venice Beach over that 2 years. And never for a second did I think that I was going to be making a career out of playing the flute, because I was a singer, guitar player, and that was hard enough to get anywhere, being a singer and a guitar player, which was much more normal and accepted in music than a recorder player, And we started traveling, doing art festivals around 1993. And we came to Austin. We played the Pecan Street Festival. We went to 40 different weekend shows a year, starting in 1993. And one thing led to another. We sold 100,000 CDs together by 1994. We had a Christmas album that went to #2 in Canada when Elton John was #1 on an absolute fluke. And then I started, I went solo and I recorded, believe it or not, I recorded 68 albums of music. It's not 68 copies, in case you're wondering, 68 different albums that I made of either flute music or vocal music that was either hard rock or vocal music that was very positive and singer-songwriter that would be comparable to James Taylor or Cat Stevens, you know? And so last year during COVID, I decided to make this album called Love Wins, with all songs that were hopeful, positive messages, because we're living in a time when we really, really, really need hope. You know, we need to have things in our life that are positive anchor points in our day, whether it's meditating or praying, whatever you want to call it, but time where we can let the noise of the world fade away and just, you know, connect inside ourselves to something that's positive and something that's going to give us solace and peace and give us something positive to think about. So that's why I made Love Wins.
And go back to you talking about the recorder. We played the tonette when I was in 2nd grade, and I think we learned 3 Blind Mice.
Yeah, that's one of the greatest hits on the tonette.
Oh, those were the days, man.
Yeah,
to go back to the 70s.
In case you're wondering, the tonette is like the opening band for the recorder.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I was a star and I didn't even know it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm with you with the way the world is right now. And I find myself getting caught up in some of that mess from time to time. And I really beat myself up after I get into a conversation with someone. And I made a statement on Twitter. It's like, you know, even if you are completely 100% right in an argument, it's not worth being in that argument, because it just brings more negativity. And I felt really bad that I did it. And when you have someone come out and it's like, hey, here's some music, let's forget about the world for a while. Yeah, it's easy listening. It kind of, some of it reminded me a little bit of Poco. And
yeah. Well, I grew up with that great 70s music and the 80s music that was really, really incredible. And, you know, I love all kinds of music. You know, my band, when I was in the AC/DC tribute band, we were billed as the loudest band in New England, and it was my fault. I loved playing guitar loud. There was nobody who played louder than me back, you know, in that period of time. But if you want, I'm in a place right now where there's music that's almost, it's like classic music. You know what I mean? Like there's a classic sound, and that's a sound of acoustic instruments with a little bit of electric instruments, the way Poco or the Eagles were, or the way James Taylor, Cat Stevens, or any of the great acoustic singer-songwriters are. It's just, I think, having played all kinds of music, I think that if you're trying to get a positive message out to people, it needs to be delivered in a package where people can receive it. And in order to receive words and lyrics that are meaningful, that to go to your heart, I think it's a little easier to get through to people's hearts if you're playing music that where the lyrics, the voice is louder, where it's not that the electric instruments are overpowering the voice so much that you can't really, not only you can't hear the lyrics, but you really can't feel what's inside those lyrics, what the singer or the writer is trying to get through in the song, because there's so much energy coming from the drums and the bass and the electric guitar that make it more powerful and intense. But there's sometimes, if you have a message that's a message from the heart, I find that it's easier for people to receive that message or hear it, if it's coming in a package that isn't so heavy, you know, it's not powerful like AC/DC, and it's more a song starts out with a simple guitar and the lyrics. So this way the listener can really listen to those lyrics to really take in not only the meaning of the words, but the vibration of what the person is singing with. Because if you're singing Highway to Hell, you're going to be singing that with a certain kind of edginess, right? And a certain kind of power, you know what I mean? But if you're singing a song like Love Wins, it's not about the power of the music and the guitar, it's about the power of the message. And the reason why I wrote that song, Love Wins, is because I had been, how do I say this? One of the things that I do a lot of things. I'm a writer, I'm a painter, I'm a musician, I teach meditation. I write movies and I write books and I write comedy. I do a lot of these things. And the thing is that looking back over my life, I realized that, especially if you're a musician, you have musicians tend to go through a lot of relationships, you know what I mean? Because being a musician and traveling is not easy on a relationship. But one of the things that I realized looking back on all the relationships in my life, whether those relationships lasted for 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years or 20 years, when you look back on all the relationships in your life, they're temporary. Because 2 days or 2 months or 2 years, that's temporary. And when we look back on our relationships, relationships end because somebody's not happy. And it's ordinarily very stressful for a relationship to end. And during that process, it's very easy to get bitter and have hard feelings and all that other stuff. But as time goes by and the years and the decades go by, we let go of that bitterness and that anger. And we just look at these people in our lives like, wow, that was a fantastic 2 years. Or that was a fantastic 2 months. Whatever it was. And then as we're looking back and appreciating the good times we had with that person, instead of thinking about the hard times. And when we're looking back on those things, what we're really looking for is the love that we found with that person that made our life enjoyable during that time period. And if you found 2 months of absolute happiness with somebody, the natural human thing is that when that ends after 2 months, if it ends after 2 months, it's like, wow, I have all these hurt feelings and I'm, resentful towards my partner and all these human things that we have. But I'm telling you that as time goes by and as the months turn into years, we hold on to less of those hard feelings. And we just look at, wow, that was really a wonderful time I got to spend with that person. And if I had the choice to spend that 2 years with somebody that I was that happy, or to have been alone and lonely and miserable during that 2 years, even though that 2-year relationship may have ended in a horrible way where it's painful, I feel like we were better off having that 2 years to spend with somebody that we got to experience that joy and that happiness and that harmony and whatever was good in that relationship, because that is better than going 2 years without having anybody that you can share your heart with and share life with, So the meaning behind Love Wins is that as we look back on all the hard times in our life, eventually we get to a place where if we're looking back at these people in our life with love, then love wins.
You mentioned about the way music makes people feel. There's music that can make you feel angry, like you want to get in your car and drive 100 miles an hour. There's some that makes you just want to party, some that makes you want to get up and dance. But it seems like music has a way of bringing people together. And one of my favorite genres outside of rock music is I love jazz, but I love reggae as well. And you have a tune on there that has a reggae sound to it.
I grew up in Brooklyn, and when I was in high school, I had a friend whose older brother had a recording studio in Brooklyn. And my friend's name is Carmen Diorio, and his brother, older brother, Pete Diorio, had this studio in Brooklyn that was called Sound Lab. And Brooklyn is like a cross section of the world. I mean, you have every color, every ethnicity, every country you can imagine. There's at least 10,000 people who live in Brooklyn who come from that country. And so, you know, the islands, Jamaica and all the Caribbean islands, there are millions of people who live in Brooklyn that came from those islands. So this studio in Brooklyn called Sound Lab, all the way back in the 70s, they would host many of these reggae bands that came from the islands, and they would come up to Brooklyn to record at Sound Lab. And like Jimmy Cliff, I mean, all the greatest reggae artists came to Brooklyn, came to that studio when I was going to high school. That was the first studio I made a recording at. And so when you live in Brooklyn and you have all these ethnicities in your junior high school and high school, that means you're hearing that music in the hallway on boom boxes or whatever you want to call it. And one of the things that I really find magical is I find that Bob Marley, even though I've never owned a Bob Marley record, I owned every Led Zeppelin and Bad Company and Jethro Tull. I knew those backwards, forwards, the music, the words, I knew all of it. But I never owned a Bob Marley record. But every time I would hear one of his songs come on the radio, I would think, man, this music really puts a smile on your face.
It does.
You can't, it's hard to be in a bad mood when you listen to Bob Marley. And so there's two songs that have the reggae feel on Love Wins. One is called Every Day Only the Good Comes My Way, and the other one is called The Best Is Yet to Come. And Every Day I had recorded on one of my earlier albums as a much more mellow song without the reggae beat. But I was getting into this, I just wanted to make music, believe it or not, that was happy. And, I'm sure that there's a lot of listeners that you have out there that are musicians. And we all know when as a musician, we take a lot of hard knocks in life, trying to get our music out there to people, trying to be appreciated, trying to be heard. It's not an easy life. And so ordinarily, when we take our feelings and put it into a song, many times a life of a musician is such a hard life, getting started and finding a way to be appreciated, that ordinarily it's most common for a musician to put his feelings into a song when he's bummed out, when he's depressed, when he, you know what I mean? Because as a musician, there are many things hardships in life that we have to deal with that really take a toll on us. And when we're beat up by life, that's when we go to our instrument and we try to express our feelings and our emotions through a song. So most of the time, as musicians, we're writing songs that are expressing sadness or hardship or depression, or things in life that are not the happy times in life, And I found that, I had gotten into spirituality and meditation a really, really long time ago. And when I would get together with my spiritual friends, like at a gathering, nobody really wanted to hear my depressing songs. You know what I mean? Because these were gatherings where people were trying to be hopeful and trying to have a positive view in life and trying to look on the bright side. And all I had was really not happy songs. You know what I mean? Because that's when that's when we go to express our feelings, is when we're not feeling great. But I have to tell you that the world needs more happy songs, and it's not necessarily easy to write a happy song that doesn't sound like it's a 10-year-old. You know what I mean? That sounds legit. You know. And one of the things that I found that was that reggae beat, it instantly puts people in a good mood. You know, maybe that music was created because the Caribbean islands were a popular tourist destination, and their economy had a lot to do with tourism. So when tourists came, whether they flew there or took a cruise ship there, they were there to party and have a good time and to smile. They're on vacation.
That's right.
And these Caribbean musicians, well, they wanted to play things that made people smile and dance and made people feel good. And I don't know the origins of reggae music, but if I would have to guess where the origins of reggae music came from, that's where I would think it came from, you know, because, you know, these were musicians who were trying to make a living, you know, trying to make some music that made them feel good and made the people who came off the cruise ships or came as tourists, you know, trying to make music that's going to put them in a good mood.
My first, I guess you'd say it was reggae, was Eddie Grant. You remember Eddie Grant?
Yeah. What's that big song he had? Was that I'm all over down to
Electric Avenue? Yeah. But he had a lot of reggae music on that album.
Yeah.
But I'm like you, I didn't own like a bunch of reggae music. Led Zeppelin, all those bands that we listened to, they were influenced by some of these Jamaican sounds. So, I mean, Jamaica, it couldn't be more obvious.
Right. For sure. You know, I'm actually there. I'm amazed by Bob Marley. I'm amazed that those songs that he wrote and he sang all those years ago, when they come on a radio station right now, it sounds so new. It sounds so relevant. It sounds so meaningful. And I think that's because what's in a person's heart when they are creating art has an influence on the people who look at that art or the people who listen to that art. And there are certain, you know, like we always used to hear this thing, all you needed to make it music was 3 chords and the truth, you know? And you know, there's merit to that, because one, if you're going to write a song with 3 chords, it has to have a good rhythm, and it has to be catchy that people can remember. And it has to be simple because it has 3 chords. And people can only remember things that are simple, you know? That's why it's so easy to remember. Da, 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 da. Right? But if I went and played 2,000 notes in 10 seconds, you can't remember any of those notes. And going back to the days when...
I have to correct you. There's Flight of the Bumblebee.
Okay. Okay. You got it. But besides that, forget it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's when we, you know, the way the music industry was started was that we had this stuff that was called radio. And in order to, that was before you had Shazam, that you could find out what song was played on the radio if you didn't know the name of it. There was only one way that you remembered a song if you were listening to the radio in the 50s or the 60s or 70s or 80s. And that one way was there had to be a hook in the chorus that repeats enough times that you can remember it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I Want to Hold Your Hand became a hit, because they kept repeating that. Like Let It Be, they kept repeating that. You know, there's a reason why. If you're a speaker, if you're a public speaker, what do they teach you in public speaking school? Repeat, 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 because you can't expect people who are thinking about this, that, and the other thing to remember anything you're saying if you don't repeat it. And that's the same reason how a song became a hit song. It could not become a hit song if it didn't have some words that people could remember, so they could call up the radio station and say, I want to hear that song.
Mm-hmm.
But they remember the hook of the song. They remember the chorus, you know? And going back to Bob Marley, there was, when a singer, there's different ways that a singer can write a song. You can write a song just to try to make something rhyme and really not have any deep meaning behind the song. Or you can put your true feelings and your truth into a song, and now it's meaningful to the singer. Now, when people are listening to somebody sing a song that they really, really are believing in, you know, that's different than listening to a song that somebody got paid $100 to sing in a demo, and you're reading the words at the microphone in the studio, and it's not even your message. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we have somebody like Bob Marley who's singing these songs that had a message that was so relatable by people in a style of music that just made everybody smile. You know, that was a winning combination, you know. So I'm hoping to get a very special endorsement from Bob Marley in heaven. I'm hoping if I talk about him at least for 10 minutes in this conversation, you know, then he's going to visit me, maybe give me a song, we'll become friends, maybe we go out for a drink or something sometime, you know.
Hey, there you go. He can help you in your guided meditation.
Right. Yeah, people can do a reggae groove while they're meditating, right?
Right. Yeah, as a kid, were you like me? It seemed like those real popular, catchy, real poppy tunes were my favorite, but then when I got older, it got more really serious about music, and I was kind of stuck to no, I only like this kind of music, and that stuff is just garbage. And then the older I got, I started to kind of appreciate it again.
Well, I feel the same way. I think when we're kids, at least in the generation when you and I were kids, right? We didn't have the internet. We didn't have unlimited searching of anything in the world, whether it's a song or a piece of history or information, we didn't have any of that.
Mm-hmm.
What did we had AM radio. We didn't even have FM radio, or FM radio was just starting, you know? And so the format of that radio is you have your top 10. The top 10 songs were played every hour. Okay. And so when we're 10, 15 years old, when we were 10 or 15 years old, the way we were exposed to music was through AM radio or FM radio when it was just starting, you know, and AM radio plays the same 10 songs every hour. That's called hit radio. And the thing is that we didn't have a lot of choices because those were the top 10 songs that were played every hour. And so we were spoon-fed that the way all the other kids were spoon-fed that, you know. And then when we got into high school, you know, then all of a sudden we're sharing albums with friends, and we have allowance so we can buy a phonograph record of our favorite Led Zeppelin or Bad Company or AC/DC album that we could do. And we would listen to those records really in two parts. You see, you had side one that was 22 minutes and side two that was 22 minutes. Right. So that's
right.
a 20-minute attention span. So when you were getting ready for school, you could put on side A of an album and listen to 22 minutes or 25 minutes. And it was a perfect amount of time. You know what I mean? I never listened to, like when I listened to Stairway to Heaven from Led Zeppelin, I never listened to side A and then side B right afterwards. I listened to side A like 5 times in a row. You know what I mean? Because you're in that mode, you know, and now when I was right there at the thing when albums started to become 60 minutes, because at that point, I was making meditation music with the flute. That's what I had gotten famous for, you know? And so, if I was wanting to, I was selling music to massage therapists, like thousands of massage therapists. I was the only musician renting a booth at these spa conventions, because while I was at Venice Beach, whenever there was a massage therapist who came up to where we were playing, these massage therapists would buy everything I had. They didn't buy one tape. They bought every single album I had, because that was before the internet. That was before streaming. And if you were a massage therapist or a spa, you had to have CDs to play all day in your spa, because if your spa is open 10 hours a day, that means you need 10 hours of music. Now, back then, it's not easy to find good, relaxing, spiritual, instrumental music that later became called New Age music. Okay. Yeah. It was very difficult to find it. So what I found was that I decided, I think it was around 1997, I decided to take a chance and get a booth at a spa convention where all massage therapists, anti-aging, you know, all of this stuff that really women are totally into, you know. And I started exhibiting at these spa conventions, and there could be 10,000 or 30,000 women at these spa conventions that were doing anti-aging and massage therapy and all these things. And they would buy everything that I had. They became fantastic customers for me. And so I developed a wholesale, I started selling music to these spas, where I would sell it wholesale to them. You know, that was back in the day when a CD was, you'd buy a CD for 18 bucks. So I had 1,500 stores that I built up a database over years and years of playing at these conventions. So these stores, whenever I had a new album out, I'd send an email or a postcard to all these people, or I would go to the spa convention, whether it was in Los Angeles or San Francisco or New York or Atlanta or Miami or Chicago. I would do these spa conventions about once every 5 or 6 weeks. And I found a way to get my music right to the people who could buy my music. And once they bought my music, they shared it with all their clients. So if I sold 5 CDs to a spa, and they had a 5 CD disc changer in their spa, and they put those 5 albums on repeat, let's say they had 20 people come through that spa that day to get a massage or a facial or something. Those 20 people are laying down with their eyes closed with a little pillow over their eyes, listening to my music for an hour. And when people listen to my flute music, it helps them connect spiritually, because there's spiritual energy in my flute music. I don't know how to say that. I've been meditating for 39 years at this point. You know, my flute music has been healing for me when I needed, you know. And as a musician, our intention comes through in the music. So when we make music and our intention is to express our anger and our frustration, then the listener picks up that energy of anger and frustration. Okay. But when a listener is listening to music that is made with the intention of bringing people peace and trying to give people some calm space inside themselves, the intention they can feel, because that is energy. Our intention is a form of energy, and people can feel that. They really, really can feel it. And I started making albums when I was selling to these massage therapists, because back then your standard album was 45 minutes. If it was 50 minutes, that was a long album. I'm not talking about a double album. I'm talking about a single album. Right. So my massage therapists that I was selling to, I literally sold to over 20,000 massage therapists between 1997 and 2014, when I started doing meditation events. And those massage therapists would play my music all day long, and they would ask me, can you make an album that is 60 minutes long? Because if I have a 60-minute massage and the music ends after 15 minutes, then I have 10 minutes of space at the end that there's no music. And I want to have music for the end of my massage client, the time, hour. And so I started making albums that were 60 minutes. Or really, I was at the cutting edge of changing instrumental music albums from 45 minutes or 50 minutes to 60 minutes because people who were massage therapists needed music for a whole hour.
Crazy, man. How you found a niche like that.
Now, I just want to tell you that when I was playing music on Venice Beach from 1990 to 1992, towards 1992, I also started playing. I played Venice Beach basically from 9 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock at night. And then we would pack up and we would drive about 45 minutes up to Universal City Walk in the Valley. And then we would play from 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock at night. And I'm not going to tell you the guy's name, but I had a friend of mine who was a street musician in Los Angeles. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, in our country, in America, we look at street musicians. If a bum is over here, a street musician is at the same level as a bum. You know what I mean? Because this is the way we look at it, right? But when I was playing at Universal City Walk and also playing at Venice Beach, I became friends with these internationally known buskers, B-U-S-K-E-R. Now, if you're wondering what a busker is, in America, that's called a street musician, and a street musician is normally not looked at with respect in America. But in Canada, they have gigantic festivals with street musicians from all over the world that they fly over there and they treat you like a celebrity, because in Canada, a street musician is a celebrity. In America, a street musician is like the opposite of a celebrity.
Right.
Okay. Because that's just the way it's looked at in our country, right? But I had a friend who was a street musician in Los Angeles who bought a house in Woodland Hills from the money he made on the street. His wife had a brand new BMW, and he had a brand new Porsche. And he was playing music on the street in LA. He had done it for years, and you would never know that that guy was making more money than your doctor.
Dang.
You know what you would never know that that was possible, because we have this image. Oh my God, a street musician is like a bum, or a street is a starving musician. You know, and believe me, I was a street musician I had people looking at me like, oh man, this guy's like a homeless guy. This guy's got nothing going for him. Right. And I had sold 500,000 albums. You know how much a CD sells for?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and these people, I could see the look on their faces. Like if I was flying to New York from LA or Miami, you know, when people would see me playing, they wouldn't look at me with the same respect as if I was playing on Carnegie Hall, you know? And if they would look at me and they would say, oh, wow, well, he just sold 3 CDs, big freaking deal. But if I sold 3 CDs for $40 every 5 minutes in an hour, I got to do the math. How much is that? But you know what I'm saying? It was, you know, I was making more money in an hour than most bands made in a whole night. And it was only because I found a way to do something that I loved, that people responded to, and that people needed. You see, it's one thing to try to sell something to somebody if they want it, but it's a whole nother level to sell something to somebody because they need it. I found that massage therapists and anybody involved in any kind of healing, anything, whether it was massage, whatever, those people needed music because they didn't have streaming. They didn't have Spotify. They didn't have all these things. They had to buy a CD to play in their spa that was going to keep their clients relaxed. And so I found that niche. And one of the things that, you know, I'll tell to anybody who is trying to get started in anything, but the riches are in the niches. You got to find your niche. You got to find there's going to be a little group of people who are going to gravitate to you, and they're going to love everything you do, whatever kind of music that is. And you got to find a way, if you're a musician, you got to find a way to get yourself in front of those people so they can like you and love you and buy your stuff so you can make a living from what you're doing.
Yeah. True. Very true. And you recall when MTV first started, we thought it was a living in because you had videos to go with the music. And then some of the radio stations would actually have a TV show come out on the local station where you could play videos and simulcast in stereo on the radio station so you can listen to it through your speakers.
Yeah.
I thought that was living in. I was like, how's it going to get any better than this? And then CDs started coming out. And I fought against CDs in the beginning. I was like, don't take my records away from me. I love my records. And then lo and behold, I bought the White Album and all these others. I had it on 8-track, I had it on record, I had it on cassette, and then I had it on CD. And now it's on my phone. Just I can pick this up anytime and there's my music. Crazy, man. It's crazy. There's the intimacy of picking up a record, enjoying the artwork. Sometimes you could open it up and there would be a liner notes. You had all the lyrics. You had a poster or some little something would come in there and you're like, yeah, extra. You open up Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon and you got poster.
Yeah.
It's you don't have that anymore.
Well, we have convenience with our phone. That's a great thing to have, the convenience of it, and you can't put it on your earbuds or your headphones, so it sounds great in your head. I remember back in the day when I was learning guitar solos that you'd have the needle on the phonograph and you would just have your thumb in the perfect place to lift up that needle and back it up like 30 seconds so you could learn that guitar solo, and you'd have to like back it up and listen to that thing like 20 times or 50 times to figure out how they were playing those notes, and that was like a whole process that was having when you look at a CD, a cover of the CD is this big, you know what I mean, like the image of the band is a couple inches big versus you have a 12-inch album or whatever size the album was. You got to see a big picture. You could it looked a lot bigger to your eyes.
Well, there's no connection on getting your music on here. Yeah, it's convenient. Yeah, I can put it on my earbuds or my little speaker or whatever, but the album, dude, is on. When you got an album, it's almost like you were looking into the group themselves. You don't get all that from this. You don't get that incredible art. You can Google the album cover and blow it up on your phone if you want to, but still, man, it's not the same.
Back then, if there was somebody that was great that was on American Bandstand or one of those, because what was Don Kirshner's rock concert? Like, if you were a musician back then, the only chance you got to see anybody playing live on television was Don Kirshner's rock concert. You would never miss that.
Midnight Special.
The Midnight Special, yeah. If a band went on tour, they didn't have videos that you could watch anytime you wanted it. That's right. And that's why in the late 70s, when Led Zeppelin came out with The Song Remains the Same, and Yes had Yes songs, and that whole rock movie thing started to become a big deal. Wow, that was like the lights had just come on. Really, any Saturday night I can go watch this concert on a big movie screen and with speakers that sounded like a big sound system. That was the greatest thing in the world.
It was.
We didn't have MTV. We didn't have any of that stuff. And the good thing about MTV is that it allowed people, musicians, to create a visual for their song and to put that out there where people could see and hear the bands at the same time. Because, if you went back in music history to the 60s, like who the greatest artists from the 60s, right? The Beatles, the Who, the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hendrix, every one of those things. When you think of Jimi Hendrix, I don't think of a guitar solo. I don't think of any music that he did. I think of what he looked like with all those colorful bandanas and those clothes. I think about what he looks like more than what he sounds like, because that's how we remember people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so the thing is that all of those guys realized back then in the 60s that if they wanted to be remembered, if they wanted to stand out, they had to do something that made them look original.
So
Brian,
let me ask you, when you think of Jimi Hendrix, you don't think of him opening up for the Monkees?
I'm sorry, I don't. Thanks for asking, though.
I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Yeah. No, that wasn't what I thought about. But you know, when you think of the Beatles, you know, they were wearing black leather jackets like every other band in the 60s. And then Brian Epstein said, hey, you guys got to look different than everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And he put in those suits, you know,
Yeah.
That was instantly recognizable. And one of the things that I found at Venice Beach was that I realized that, okay, I'm playing one little recorder that everybody learns in third or fourth grade, right? And I'm playing with a beautiful woman who has long, dark, curly hair all the way down, white cotton flowing dresses blowing in the wind at Venice Beach, and a beautiful wooden Celtic harp, right? Now, people would walk by all the time, all day long at Venice Beach and say, look at that beautiful woman and that beautiful harp. And I was like the invisible man. Like, I couldn't get any attention no matter what I did. And in the beginning, because we only knew 6 songs, we had to play those same 6 songs over and over, like 30 or 40 times a day, because those were the only 6 songs we knew. So in the afternoon, after I'd already played those songs 25 times, I was going out of my mind, being bored, because if somebody said to you, hey, I want you to repeat the same 6 poems 40 times today, oh my goodness, you would be thinking, make it stop.
Yeah.
Somebody make it stop, right? And so what I would start to do in the middle of the afternoon, I'm going to use this pen as a make-believe flute, and I'm going to use this pencil as a make-believe second flute. So during the afternoons, after I was bored out of my mind from playing one flute and do the same 6 songs over and over, right? During the afternoon, I would pick up a second flute, and I would try to play 2 of these at one time in different sizes so they would be in harmony. And every time I did this, whoever was walking by would say, hey, look, there's a guy's playing 2 flutes at one time. And then she was invisible. And I swear that was the only reason why I did it, was because I was the invisible man, you know, until I played 2 flutes at one time. And that was a visual that people never forgot. And people used to come back to Venice Beach if they lived in LA, and they knew we would be at the same place by the Fig Tree Cafe every Saturday and Sunday. We'd get there about 9 o'clock and start playing at 10. And we'd play from 10 to 5. And it became a thing in LA where if it was a weekend, and, you know, Venice Beach is like the second most popular tourist attraction in California after Disneyland. They get 50,000 people a day there.
Wow.
And so I had, you know, between the tourists and the locals, I became like a fixture at Venice Beach from 1990 to 1992. And I wore this white puffy shirt every weekend because Lisa, my harpist, had the really great idea. After the first weekend that we played at Venice Beach, she was shopping at a place where all the musicians in LA buy their cool clothes. It's called Salvation Army. Okay? Because that, you know, that's when you're when you're an up-and-coming musician and you're hurting for money and you got to find something cool, you go to Salvation Army. And she found this white puffy pirate shirt after we played there it was either the first day or the first weekend. I don't remember if it was one day or 2 days. And she brought this white puffy pirate shirt. And she said, well, what do you think about wearing this? Because it really goes with your image, because I had much longer hair. And I said, well, what the hell? And it stuck.
Why not?
You know, why not? I would wear sunglasses so my friends couldn't recognize me. Because I was playing in rock clubs during the week. And then on the weekends, you know, I put on my white puffy shirt, my sunglasses that you couldn't really see who I was. And I literally would have my friends standing 10 feet in front of where I was sitting on Venice Beach playing with this harpist. And they wouldn't recognize me, because you would never think that this guy who played a 1961 Gibson SG through a Marshall stack wearing leather clothes would be this fluffy flute guy playing two flutes at one time at Venice Beach wearing a puffy shirt. You'd never think that would be the same person. And that's where the writers from Seinfeld got the idea for the puffy shirt episode, because the writers from Seinfeld lived in Pacific Palisades, very close to Venice Beach.
Really?
I think it was Jack Bruce, who was in Cream with Eric Clapton and Ginger Baker.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. They got I don't know if it was when they got, you know, voted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And they asked him, why do you think your music is still alive 40 years after you made it? Why do you think that is? And he said, because it was recorded live.
That's right.
I recorded Love Wins live with one of the greatest bass players and one of the greatest drummers in the world, Tony Levin, who played bass on every single Peter Gabriel album and every single tour for 40 years. He also played with Paul Simon, Still Crazy After All These Years. He played with John Lennon on John Lennon's last album with Yoko Ono, Double Fantasy. He's one of the greatest bass players in the world. There's nobody who's going to argue with that.
Right.
And Jerry Prada was the original drummer with Peter Gabriel, and he's played with everybody. He played with Paul McCartney, Indigo Girls, Sarah McLachlan. You know, it's hard to find a great artist that hired studio drummers that didn't hire Jerry Marotta. And we recorded live at Jerry's studio in Woodstock. That was an old wooden church that was made into a recording studio called Dreamland Recording Studios. And we recorded this album, Love Wins, live. We actually recorded 2 albums, but I'm only releasing one of them right now. You know, the other one will come out next year. But, you know, when you're playing live with people, that has energy. Mm-hmm. And, you know, energy is a vibration. And everything in the physical world and the heavenly world is based on frequency and vibration. Some things have an uplifting vibration that make you feel good, give you, you know what I mean? And other music does the opposite. And I've done all kinds of music. And at this point in my life, after doing 500 meditation events between 2014 and 2019 called A Portal Between Heaven and Earth, at this point in my life, I'm more interested to see what kind of a positive effect I can have on people versus a negative effect. Maybe negative sounds too harsh, but I just choose to do things that have a positive effect on people, because we all have heard about this thing called karma. And ordinarily people think about karma as good karma or bad karma. Now, you can talk to certain spiritual people about that, and they would say, well, there is no good karma. There is no bad karma. Well, okay, if you want to take that approach, then let's look at it like this. We have enjoyable karma, and we have unenjoyable karma.
Right.
Okay, because everything we do comes back to us, right? So if you're going to take that approach as an anchor point, that everything we do comes back to us, wouldn't that make you want to do good things in this world? Yeah. Because if that means that there's more goodness coming back to you, to me, that's something that makes sense to me. You know, I never thought I'd be doing meditation events playing the flute. You know, I never thought I'd be playing the flute on Venice Beach. I was a rock and roll guy. I played with hard rock musicians and heavy metal musicians that got really famous, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was going to get famous for playing a flute or playing two flutes. You got to be kidding me. I mean, why would I ever even think about that? And
Jethro Tull?
Yeah, but he played one flute.
But still, it was a flute.
Right. But I was getting nowhere trying to put my flute into my. Yeah, but I can tell you something funny that happened. I grew up in Brooklyn, and my best friend, the guy who taught me how to play guitar, who was very, very, very successful in Texas, I'll have you know, his name was Mark Reale. He was the lead guitar player and songwriter for this band called Riot, not Quiet Riot, Riot, R-I-O-T. They were from Brooklyn, and they got a couple of record deals. They used to play in Texas all the time, in Europe and Japan, you know, where hard rock is so popular, you know. And their career, like everybody else's career, went through high periods and low periods. You know, you're a rock star, then you're not a rock star, then you're a rock star again. You know, that's the way a musician's life is, unfortunately. And during one of the periods when they had, you know, they were not on the top, when they lost their record deal and they were trying to find their way back up to the top, Mark invited me to the studio while they were recording a demo of some new songs because they were trying to get a record deal again. Okay. And so Mark invited me down. I was living in upstate New York, and for really no reason in the world, I brought my recorder. This was 10 years before I went to Venice Beach. There was no reason for me to have my recorder in my jacket. You know what I'm saying? I didn't bring it around. It was just like a goofy thing that day. I just thought, you know what? I'm going to take my recorder. I don't know why I'm taking it. You know, you just go with the flow of a crazy idea. And so that day I went to visit Mark and the band in the studio where they were trying to put a band together again. And they had this song that started with a classical guitar intro that was kind of like Greensleeves. And it went from that classical intro for, let's say, 40 seconds into this crash bang speed metal song called Blood Streets. And Mark asked me if I would, you know, I had this flute in my pocket that I brought in my jacket. He said, hey, you got that thing? Try playing something over the intro of Blood Streets where it sounds very classical like Greensleeves. So I played my flute on this little classical intro and then crash bang into the speed metal song, you know. And that song, because it was so unique that it started with a flute, with a classical guitar and a flute, and then it went into this heavy metal song. That song got Riot signed to their next record deal because of the originality of that. And that became the title song of their album Blood Streets. And they made a music video out of it. And that music video was on Headbangers Ball every Saturday night for 3 years, with me playing the recorder in the beginning of that.
Oh, wow. Look what you did.
Yeah.
Well,
and at that time, I really was not listening to MTV, so I didn't even know. I didn't even know that I was on there every Saturday, that my flute was on there every Saturday night for 3 years. I found out years later.
It's pretty incredible, though, if you think about it. I mean, Headbangers Ball. I mean,
yeah,
I was used to like hearing flute music. I mean, some of it would be in Led Zeppelin, some of it would be in, of course, Jethro Tull. Yes, all these bands. You know, the whole prog rock thing. You'd hear all these instruments that you normally didn't hear in a rock album. But
you know, on the first Aerosmith, Steven Tyler played the flute.
Really?
Yeah, and in the early Genesis albums, when Peter Gabriel was the singer, he also played the flute.
All right.
It's really hard to make a flute work in a rock band. And Ian Anderson and Jethro Tull, he is so great It's really amazing, you know. He amazes me. That guy amazes me. I've seen him in the last couple of years, you know, and he's just incredible.
Well, all those musicians are incredible. They do more than just get up and play a 3-chord song.
Yeah,
there's more to it, and that's what I look for.
Yeah, they have songs with four chords.
Right. Well, I could easily be a more popular show on YouTube if I did more controversial stuff, but I'm sticking to trying to get this positivity out there and hopefully inspire people. And it's even if it's one person, we've accomplished that.
Totally.
I've been fortunate that people will message me and say, thank you for having so-and-so on the show. And that really helped me, got me through a hard time. That means everything in the world, more than just having, oh, well, what's the celebrity gossip for the day? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't need that. There's enough of that going on out there. And I'm glad that there's people like you that come out and try to bring some positivity in the world. So thank you.
No, you're welcome. You know, everything is so relative. You know, we look at what we have and we look at what we don't have. Now, there is always going to be somebody who has more than you.
Oh, yeah.
And there's always going to be somebody who has less than you.
Yep.
The key is finding the things that you can do in your life that not only make you feel good about yourself, but that also have a positive thing that you're doing in this world, because every single one of us is putting out energy every day. And we've all heard the saying, oh, it's the thought that counts. So when you have a nice thought for somebody and they say, oh, well, that doesn't work for me, but it's the thought that counts. Okay, great. Well, what about all the negative thoughts we put out every day? Where do those things add up into everything, you know? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I found, and it's not easy to do, because everybody has hard days. You know what I mean? That's part of life. There's nobody who doesn't have to deal with hardship in one way or another. But one of the things that I have found that I almost feel like you know how like sometimes you can have a feeling that like you should do something, a gut feeling, you know?
Oh yeah.
And it could be something like, I don't really want to do that. I really don't feel like doing that today, you know? And one of the things that I found in my life is that at times when I was at a low point, when I didn't feel like doing anything and I wasn't feeling positive about anything, like when I'm having a hard day, you know, because we all have hard days, you know.
Oh yeah.
But one of the things that I found that was by going out of my way when I'm not feeling great to do something great for somebody else, or even if it's just something nice to somebody else. It could be like you're at the supermarket and you see somebody's by themselves and you just give them a smile and say hello that they didn't expect to see.
Yep.
You have no idea what that person has got going on in their head or in their heart today. And at that moment that you're just being nice for no damn reason, just because you just want to be nice to that person, you just want to shed a little light in that person's day, you have no idea the difference that can make in somebody. That person could be incredibly lonely because they've been alienated from everything that's happened with the pandemic the last couple of years. You never know what people's needs are, you know? And if we start thinking about what we can do, little things that we can do to help our neighbor, those little things that we can do it's infectious. Because of this, you go up to somebody and you do something nice for somebody for no reason, like paying it forward. You have no idea that could inspire that person to not only turn around their whole day and their whole week, but it could also inspire that person to do something nice for somebody else for no reason. And then all of a sudden, We've got a virus of something good that's happening, of people trying to uplift each other. Because if you went back to the time of the cavemen and the cave women, to be fair to both genders, right? The only way, right? The only way we survived as cavemen and cave women was by bonding together. Because that was the only way we could survive the elements and the animals that wanted to eat us, was by bonding together. And that's the most simplest thing in the world, you know, and every single religion in the world has their own version of treat your neighbors like yourself.
That's right.
You know, it doesn't matter if you're a Christian, a Buddhist, a Muslim, a Hindu, it doesn't matter what it is, because every religion has that in their foundation of the religion.
That's right.
It's just a basic thing of, come on, we're all in this thing together. You know what I mean? If Russia starts getting really freaking crazy with everything they're doing, we have to bond together as one country, or else we're not going to be a country.
That's right. We were talking about surviving the other day. You know, I might be able to hunt, but I don't know how to dress a deer properly. I have a brother-in-law who does, so I could easily, you know, get together with him and we can share the work there if it came down to it. But well, I know how to grow a few vegetables, but I'm not the best at it. Maybe you know how to grow them better than I do. Let's get together, you know.
Well, if you really want to dress a deer, you could put boots and a scarf on it.
I'm gonna chalk that up to dad joke, but I would tell my wife the same thing, so I have no room to talk. But I mean, we're going to need each other eventually, and if we're split, how we're supposed to take care of each other, we won't survive.
Yeah,
it's sad the way things are, but we just got to keep pushing forward and doing everything positive that we can. Yeah. Now you have a website?
I do. David Young Music is my website, and my Instagram handle is David Young Soul Ascension.
Okay.
Yeah, what books and stuff that I've written. I'm a painter. You know, my booth won Best Booth at Art Basel 2019 in the Spectrum area of Art Basel, and you know, there's lots of different things that you can look at or read or find out about on my website, because I've been doing this a really long time.
And what about your guided meditation? Can people find you? I mean, be able to do their classes through that?
Yeah, I used to do 4 meditation events every week. You know, there were some weeks I did 10 of them by doing 2 on Saturday and 2 on Sunday in 2 different cities. Right now, I'm working on a couple of television shows right now, and I'm not doing a lot of my meditation events like I used to. I'm going to England at the end of October to speak at the Body, Mind, Spirit Expo in Birmingham, England, and then I'm doing a tour for 3 weeks around England doing my meditation events. But I'm starting to do events again in the United States. If you go into my website, or if you go into Facebook, either David Young Public Figure, that's the best one, because my personal page is maxed out. But if you look up David Young Public Figure, you can, you know, there's all kinds of things on there. There would be like some of my events where I'm doing the meditations with the 2 flutes and I'm teaching and everything. You check out those things, you can find out where I am and what I'm doing.
I'm going to share those links with our audience, and I also want to thank my audience. If you've come by here for the first time, I appreciate that. Hit that subscribe button. Please come back. For those of you who are regular, thank you for that support. Because of you, I get to do this. And until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace. Love